Hello and welcome. This is BB True Crime.
It was a very awkward pause there at the beginning.
No, I was going to say hello, but then I had this tickle in my cough and I was like,
Yes, they are still ill.
We are still ill.
I'm not ill.
I'm glad to see this.
For once.
Yes, I am Becky.
I am Beth.
And this is episode 25 of BB True Crime for the case that isn't a crime?
Officially. Yes.
Yeah, when you use words like officially, I doubt much going on there.
The thing is, it's technically classed to some people as unsolved. The cause of death is unknown, but it's just the case I feel like doesn't get talked about enough.
Okay.
And when I first heard about it a few years ago, I was obsessed.
It's not difficult for you.
No, but there was something really different about this that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Okay.
And I think it kind of like strikes at a fear that we all have deep down about our lives, the people in our lives, loneliness. It's just sad.
Okay.
And I don't want this woman to be forgotten. So
Well,
I was like, we need to do it.
Yeah, let's make sure she's not. Let's go.
So this case is about a lady called Joyce Vincent.
Joyce Vincent. It's a pretty name.
And she was a very pretty lady.
Pretty lady, okay.
Very talented. So, like I said, it's not technically a crime. Granted, I know we're a true crime podcast. But it is a very mysterious case, and there's a lot of unsolved things.
Okay.
About this case.
Okay.
So, this is obviously going to be very centered around Joyce, but that's kind of how I wanted to do it anyway.
Okay.
So she was born in London's Hammersmith area.
Nice.
On the 19th of October, 1965. She actually had a very cool, ethnic background. Her parents emigrated to London from Grenada, and she was of Douglas descent. Her father, called Lawrence, was a carpenter of African descent, and her mother, Lyris, was of Indian descent. A very mixed background there.
Damn.
Following an operation, however, her mother died when she was only 11.
Oh, that's sad.
She had 4 older sisters, and they took responsibility for upbringing.
That's cute.
She had a strained relationship with her emotionally distant father.
Ugh.
She actually claimed to people that she knew that he died in 2001. But he didn't. He actually died in 2004. And he didn't know that she'd been telling people that he died prior.
It's a bit weird.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe that relationship just ended and she'd rather just tell people that he was dead instead of having to explain that kind of thing, which I kind of get.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Like, obviously, I'm not very close with a lot of my family anymore, so sometimes, I don't do it, but sometimes, instead of, having to explain the relationship, it would just be easier to say they're dead.
Yeah, because they are.
Technically.
Dead to you.
Yeah. So, I kind of get it.
In a sense that they're not in your life anymore.
Yeah. She attended Melcombe Primary School and Fulham Gillett School, which was a golf school. A school for girls. A golfer school. Wow.
I didn't know whether you were saying girl or golf there. I was like, what?
It was a school for girls.
Got it. Girls only school.
But she left at 16, unfortunately, with no qualifications.
That's a shame. I wonder why that was.
She ended up doing really well for herself, though.
Okay.
Despite that.
Good girl.
So now we're in 1985. She began working as a secretary. But in 2001, she ended up resigning for unknown reasons. Like, people have talked to, her previous co-workers and stuff, and they were all like, she was really good at the job, and she kind of told different people different things as to why she was randomly leaving all of a sudden. Some people she told that she'd gotten better off somewhere.
Yeah.
Some people she'd told something else to, and it was just... She was a very mysterious and, like, not secretive, but private, I think, person.
Yeah.
Shortly after this, she resigned in March 2001. So she was only in her 30s. She actually ended up spending some time in a domestic abuse shelter. And during that time, she actually worked as a cleaner in a budget hotel. During this time, she became estranged from her family as well, which I'm assuming is because of whatever she'd gone through to be in that place at that time. So yeah, like I said, it was speculated that she might have been ashamed of being a victim of domestic abuse, or that, you know, she didn't want really her family knowing, because apparently her family didn't know.
Okay.
And also a very likely one that she didn't want to be found by whoever this abuser was, which is still unknown.
Damn.
So a couple of years later, February 2003, she moved into a bedsit flat above Wood Green Shopping City, which is where she later died.
Damn.
The flat was owned by a housing trust that was used to house victims of abuse.
Okay.
And, like, they paid a bit towards the rent, that kind of thing, towards the bills.
Yeah.
So in November 2003, the same year, she ended up going to the hospital after vomiting up blood. And it was due to an ulcer. She was only there for 2 days, but, like, it was all sorted and it was fine. Sorry, I'm getting quiet here because we're coming up to her death, and like, I don't know, it just really affects me, because, you know, when sometimes, you know, you're going through it a bit and you don't really, like, want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so you, like, might distance yourself away from people, which I do all the time.
Yeah.
It was that kind of situation, but it just ended up going on for a lot longer.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was thought that she died in December 2003, so that same year. The cause of death is unknown.
Okay.
She wasn't found until 3 years later.
3 years?
Yeah.
Shit. So her father died in that period of time, didn't he?
I think that was 2004.
Yeah.
So she died before he did.
Okay. So 2001 was when she had the ulcer issue?
No, she had it like a month or so before she died. But,
Damn.
She died around, because they can't exactly pinpoint when it was, December 2003. She had the ulcer around November.
Okay.
But she wasn't discovered. Her body wasn't discovered, yeah.
Christ. That's a while. That's really sad.
So she also suffered from asthma. But it wasn't, like, horrifically bad.
No.
And neither was the ulcer, because obviously it had been treated.
Yeah.
So they can't really officially say that they had something to do with her death, because we don't know.
Yeah.
Some people think she might have had maybe like an asthma attack, or it might have been complications with the ulcer that she'd recently had. And, you know, it can't be ruled out. But at the same time, because it had been so long, there wasn't enough of her.
Yeah.
to know how she died.
Yeah.
Her
she decomposed already.
Her remains were skeletal.
Yeah.
Mostly skeletal. According to the pathologist, she was laying on her back next to a shopping bag surrounded by Christmas presents that she had wrapped but never got to deliver.
Oh, the depression of this case.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's so
Christ.
upsetting. It's so upsetting. She never...
So clearly she was fully intending on making some kind of effort that Christmas.
Yeah. Like, suicide is definitely out of the picture. It's not suicide.
No, you don't go and buy a shit ton of Christmas presents and then off yourself.
She didn't get to the point where she wrote the names on the gifts, so that we don't actually know who the gifts were for. But I'd imagine some of her family, like her sisters and things. But obviously, she was estranged from them at this point. But the reason of how she became estranged from them is just so sad also. Everything about this is just, it hurts me. It really gets to you. Because you end up realizing this can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
Especially in like a busy city, because she lived in London, where there are God knows how many people.
I mean, the thing is if I lived, let's say if I lived alone, you know, if you and I lived in separate cities, and one of us lost contact with the other one for a few weeks, I would start to get concerned. From my point of view, I would start to get concerned if I hadn't heard from you in a couple of weeks.
But that's the thing. You're my best friend.
Exactly, but that's the thing. That's the sad thing about that, is that
people that
even
don't...
if I don't have much contact with my family, which, you know, admittedly I don't. I talk to them sporadically when necessary, but we still get together occasionally. But, like, I have a best friend who, after a couple of weeks, will kind of wave a little flag and be like, alright, some shit going on here.
But what about the people that don't?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going into what, month 6 or 7 of not speaking to any of my aunts or uncles. I'm aware they're okay because they're popping up on social media and shit. But
I can't remember last time I spoke to some family members.
Exactly. But that's the thing. It's like, where's her best friend?
She didn't
have one, which is just so sad because
she didn't really have
any
friends, really.
Which is just sad as all hell.
And the thing is, so a documentary got made. This case and the low-key makes me quite emotional.
I can tell, yeah.
And there's something so, like, well, yeah, sad. But, like, also the fact it could happen literally to anyone.
It's not just that. It's just the fact that it's relatable because we've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all had those periods where we haven't spoken to anybody, we've dropped off the radar, and there is this niggling kind of doubt of like, well, shit, what if something had happened to me in that period? No one would have known.
No one would know, yeah. Literally.
Because if I haven't spoken to you for 2 months, and then I stop reaching out to you, and then something happens but nobody knows about it, no one's then going to think anything of it, of the fact that I'm not answering the phone anymore.
Yeah.
When in a normal situation, if you don't answer the phone, people worry.
And, you know, maybe at this point, you know, you'd be like, oh, well, work would contact you. By this point, she wasn't working.
Yeah, no.
She'd left for unknown reasons. Yeah, so there was a documentary that had been made about her case because the person, they read about it, and I think it appeared in, it must have been around the time when a body was found. And it went into a little bit, but the thing is, no one really knows a lot about the case because...
No one really knows anything to begin with.
Yeah, no one really knows much about her either. And so this person read it and was like, obviously they connect... Oh, shit. Okay, so I apologize because we got really into whatever the fuck we were just talking about, and then we had someone viewing our flat.
So the pause button had to be hit and then we had to pretend that we were absolutely fine
and not sad.
So now that we're out of the big sad somber mood of this case a little bit.
Yeah, I have no idea what the fuck we were up to talking about.
I think we were talking about the how realistic it all was.
Yeah,
that it could happen to us. And all that.
And to anyone. What about friends you used to have that you haven't spoken to in years?
Oh, don't start doing that.
Literally, it's just sad, man. But yeah, so she was found in 2006. And it's thought that she died in 2003.
Damn.
And something that supports that is that there was still food in her fridge in the bedsit with expiry dates.
In 2003.
2003, yeah. Damn. So neighbors, and so this case, it poses the question: how does someone be dead in their flat for 3 years and no one noticed?
Right. I'm sorry, decomposing body smell?
Yeah, literally.
It's pungent.
And it was a bedsit. So, like ours, it was a block of flats.
Yeah.
With a lot of people in.
Yeah.
So, neighbours eventually became to assume that maybe the flat was empty. Because obviously they'd never see anyone.
Yeah. I was going to say, because the turnover rate for these places is probably quite high.
True.
So if you've never been introduced to anybody in that flat, you're going to assume it's empty, especially if there's no noise.
Yeah.
There's no activity. There's no
that's
kind
the thing. There was noise, but I'll get into that. Then the odour of the decomposing body.
I'm drinking.
They actually attributed the smell to the bins that were on the property. Apparently the bins were near the window of her flat, so they just thought it was the bins. But I'm sorry, how smelly must your bins be if you've just emptied them and this horrific smell is still there? Human bodies, when they're decomposing, have a very, specific smell.
They do. It's a very specific smell.
I don't think it's going to be the same as a bin smell.
No. There's a bin smell, and then there's decomposing smell. Even a decomposing animal does not smell like a bin.
Yeah. And you know what? I've not smelt a human decomposing.
I've smelt an animal decomposing, and it's rank.
I have not smelt that either. But I'd like to say I'd be able to tell the difference between that and bin juice. Right? I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous. Right? So also,
it's moments like that where it make me wish that this was a YouTube channel, just so that everybody listening could see your face when you said that.
Bin juice.
Bin juice. The anger.
I hate bin juice.
I throw out bins for a living, honey. I get bin juice all over me.
I hate it, bitch. So the flat's windows didn't that you couldn't see inside the flat.
Okay.
Through the windows. It was quite a noisy building. So
bedsits normally are.
Yeah. Her television was still on when they found her body.
The television had been on for 3 years.
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, her TV was still on. She was sat in the living room with the TV still on. Still playing. Apparently it's on BBC. Some kind of BBC. Yeah. Yeah.
That's dead sad. If you find my dead body, you better make sure that there's no incriminating evidence around me.
Well, I'd just off myself then.
No, we got the 2-day rule. 2-day rule.
No. But it was because, some people think that maybe because the building was so loud, no one ever questioned the fact that it might have covered up the noise of the TV, yeah. So, like I said, because it was a bedsit for people that were usually in, domestic situations, half of her rent was automatically paid by the housing trust.
Okay.
By benefits and stuff.
Yeah.
Which apparently was part of the reason that they thought she was still alive, because her rent was just still being paid. Now a point of this that they don't really mention is they pay half the rent.
Well, how about the other half?
Exactly. Right, so I'm assuming maybe she'd saved up a lot from the job she'd had for years.
Yeah.
And it was quite a high paying job.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just coming out of that.
Or maybe she'd saved up a decent amount and it took 6 to 12 months of unanswered communications before somebody was like, right, we need to kick this bitch out.
Well, that's the thing. No one got to that point.
No?
For 3 years, that's how her body was discovered. There was no wellness check. But, well, because no one knew where she was living.
Yeah.
But it was because they were like, she hasn't
paid her rent.
Yeah, she hasn't been paying it for God knows how long. Now we should go kick her out. Go in, find a body. Yeah.
That's sad, honey.
I know. So yeah, apparently she'd had over 2 years worth of unpaid rent. Don't know why it would take you over 2 years to go investigate that. Because I'm sorry, if we didn't pay our rent for a few months, our landlord would be on our asshole.
True, but at the same time, in bedsits, I think they have a longer period, I think, of unpaid rent before they're allowed to take action.
I doubt it would be that long.
Not to mention, they are getting half the rent.
True.
So they're probably less. Plus, it's for domestic abuse people.
Yeah.
Sorry, domestic abuse victims. So they're probably more lenient about it.
True. But, yeah, she ended up having, like, way over, like, $2,000 worth of unpaid rent. So, like I said, it got to a point where they decided to repossess the property, and that's how she was found.
Damn.
So, her corpse was discovered on the 25th of January 2006 when bailiffs forced entry into the flat.
Rip the bailiffs.
Yeah. The television and heating was still running. So, the heating still on.
That sped up decomp.
Oh, yeah. So, can you imagine the smell? And I'm sorry. How are you attributing that to bin juice? I can't.
She's really caught on this fact.
I am.
She's really caught on this.
Decomposing a body that fast with fucking heating on, and you're still attributing that to bin juice? Are you shitting me? Oh, I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy.
Bin juice!
Please don't let that be like a hashtag of our podcast.
Bin juice!
Hashtag bin juice. Oh, God.
I can't. I'm sorry. Bin juice!
I can't forgive that. I can't. It's the bin juice. No.
It's the bin juice!
No.
Let's get you a t-shirt that just says bin juice on it.
I'd be very upset by that. But yeah, so the reason the television and the heating was still running is because there's a thing called debt forgiveness.
Yes.
And her bills were being paid through automatic debt.
Yeah.
So even though she would have been in hella debt by the time they discovered her body, it just kept rolling over. Yeah. It kept adding up and adding up. Yeah. So again, with the neighbors, no concerns were actually raised by neighbors or visitors of the building at any point between the 2 years, between the death and what would have been the discovery.
Wasn't it 3 years?
Yeah, it was 3 years. Her remains were, like I said, too badly decomposed to do a full post-mortem.
And basically get any answer.
Yeah, she had to be actually identified through dental records. Because they literally could not do anything else with it.
Well, in 3 years, all the flesh would be gone.
Yeah, especially with the heating on.
Yeah, be left with skeletal remains.
Yeah, there were obviously bugs everywhere.
Yeah,
obviously.
Which speeds up decomp.
Yeah. So the police ruled the death as natural causes.
Okay.
Just because of the asthma and the ulcer she'd had before, because the thing is, they can't do a post-mortem. There was no evidence in the flat, like, they couldn't really, like, explore anything.
And I'm presuming there was no, like, obvious signs, like skeletal damage or anything.
Not really.
To indicate, like, an attack or something. So it would have been natural to say...
The thing is, I think it was probably natural. It's not the death that... I mean, yeah, the death is upsetting. and how it seems very sudden.
Yeah.
But it's the afterwards for me.
It's the 3 years.
It's the 3 years, and then afterwards she just kind of fades back into obscurity, and it's just.
It doesn't feel like anything happened. Like she was undiscovered for 3 years. They found her. They were like, "Oh shit, she's dead," and then she disappeared again.
Yeah, and it's just yeah. Yeah, like I said, there was nothing to suggest foul play, and like I said, it probably was natural, but still. The front door was actually double locked, and there was no sign of a break-in. At the time of her death, rumor had it she did have a boyfriend, but they couldn't locate him, and he wouldn't come forward. It's a bit sus, but alright. Drink!
I just did!
Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
Lord.
I'm running out of water.
Well, refill. Her sisters.
Oh, here we go.
So, this explains the estrangement.
Okay.
So, her sisters, during the time that she would have died and then been missing. Say missing, but obviously we know where she was.
Yeah.
Her sisters actually did contact a private detective to try and find where she was. Because obviously she'd been missing for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm going to assume some of those Christmas presents probably would be for her sisters.
Uh-huh.
He tried. He even contacted like the Salvation Army. He couldn't find her. The family actually, not probably including her dad, but the sisters, they actually did end up writing letters to her. But they obviously didn't get a response because they're probably, at this time she would have been dead. And as a result, the family then thought she purposely didn't want to talk to them. Yeah, I know, it's horrible. It's just, nothing in this case is nice. It all makes me sad. Oh, bro.
Because letters, look, phone calls you can dodge. Face-to-face meetings you can dodge.
No, I don't know.
There's nothing about a letter.
I don't know where they would have been posting the letter, because clearly it can't have been to her flat, because then they would know where she is.
Maybe to her last known.
I don't know, maybe, but yeah, they just thought she didn't want to speak to them. So obviously they stopped looking. But that wasn't the case. She had Christmas.
Died.
Yeah, and she had Christmas presents probably for them as well. Yeah. That's shit.
That's beyond shit, man.
Yeah, I know. I know.
That's really sad.
So, the thing that becomes a debate, with her, like, the way she died,
yeah,
for people, is that, the position of how she died, the position of her death, for example, if she was to have an asthma attack, say it was the asthma, you'd be struggling. You'd be, like, trying to breathe. Like, I've seen my brother have an asthma attack before. It's horrible. But if you're on your own, you'd be trying to get some help.
Yeah.
You'd be trying to get to a phone, trying to get to the door. Nothing.
Yeah.
She was just laid in a very calm position. The same thing for if she was in, like, really bad pain with the ulcer. You'd probably try and ring the hospital because she'd been in the hospital before. So clearly she did that last time.
Unless it was a blood clot.
I don't know. The thing is, we'll never know. But most people think it's one of them two. Asthma or the ulcer.
Or, my cough. My cough could have killed her.
Yeah, I'm sure your cough was the reason. Yeah, back in 2003.
Yeah. I would have been 6.
Yeah, I'm sure you had it back then. Yeah.
It's a recurring issue.
So, obviously, when her body was found, it was a little bit of a big thing for a while. So it appeared in the newspaper because it was like, body of woman not found for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's found with the TV still on.
Yeah.
But then after that, like I said, it just kind of faded again.
Back into obscurity.
Yeah. So, in a newspaper, it was quoted to say that her friends noted her as someone who fled at signs of trouble, who walked out of jobs if she clashed with a colleague, and who moved from one flat to the next all over London. She didn't answer the phone to her sister and didn't appear to have her own circle of friends, instead relying on the company of strangers who came with a new package, for example, like with a new boyfriend, a colleague, or a flatmate. So she never had her own circle of friends. It was always someone else's friends.
Can I just say that sounds like a massive attack?
It does a little bit.
It sounds like hey, she died, that's sad, but the whole thing is her fault.
Yeah, it does a bit. But
I'm just like, bitch!
That thing about the friends was true, because that's also in the documentary.
I understand that, but at the same time, like, people don't do that just for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
Like, it's normally trauma related, or it's because you're hiding from somebody.
But the thing is, it's just like, I don't see how she couldn't make friends, because she was very social. Like, you saw videos and stuff of her from people that were her friends and did know her personally in the documentary. And she's very much a social butterfly. Yeah. She can talk to anyone, and like, but she just didn't.
She was depressed.
Have her own friends, and there's nowhere that says she's depressed.
No?
Nowhere.
Okay.
But she probably was. But
it would make a lot of sense if she was.
Yeah.
Or at least high functioning depression.
Yeah. But like I said, so yeah, a documentary came out after someone saw this newspaper article and was like thinking the same thing we are, that's horrible. This woman shouldn't just
disappear.
Yeah, again. So they made a documentary about it, and they spent God knows how long trying to find people that knew her. And they actually did find a few people. But so it's called Dreams of a Life. Yeah. I've watched it once. I could only watch it once because it upset me so much. Because the thing is, especially throughout the film as well, you start to feel like you know her.
Yeah.
But then you know how it ends, and she dies on her own, and it's just
sad.
Yeah. The film confronts issues such as loneliness. And it says, even while living in one of the busiest cities, how the loss of contact with friends and families can cause no one to notice a missing relative or friend, and how a body can go unnoticed in a room feet away from a busy street without any repercussions from unpaid rent or bills.
It's one of the things that's scary about living in a city is how easy it is to disappear.
Yeah, and the fact that hundreds of people would have been walking past that window.
Thousands.
Every day.
Hundreds of thousands, probably.
And no one knew.
No one knew a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many times must the people walked out front of her flat?
Yeah, God.
Walked past their door and gone, oh, there's that smell again, but not done anything.
Yeah. So like I said, the person that did the documentary tracked down as many people as she could, but obviously no one really knows much about her. They describe, the people that did though, the people that were somewhat close to her, describe her as a beautiful, intelligent, socially active woman. Like she used to go out dancing a lot. And everyone would just be enamored by her. And she was a very beautiful woman.
Yeah.
So, like I said, she had been dead for almost 3 years. There was washing up heaped in the kitchen sink, mounting of post at the front door. But she didn't fit. Obviously, lonely deaths are a thing.
Yeah.
Like they happen a lot in Japan, especially.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But she didn't fit the typical profile of someone that would die like that. She wasn't a loner. She wasn't an addict, anything like that. She wasn't a drinker. Who she was and the circumstances of her death are a mystery. She always wanted to sing. She wanted to be a singer. She'd actually been in a studio a few times. They played that in the documentary. And she was really good at it. She was really good
sad.
at it. But it said that also she moved at least once a year. A friend that she'd previously dated but remained friends with, said that she died of neglect. We all loved her, but not enough to stop her dying. That quote shook me. I was like, ugh.
I can see how, yeah.
That's so sad. Nobody that she knew was really worried when she fell out of touch with them, because in it says she often did. They just thought that she was off somewhere having a better life than they were. Her aspirations and desires, her immaculate way of presenting herself, they masked any deeper troubles that she might have had.
I do think she had deeper troubles.
And that was Joyce.
Oh, she's pretty.
Yeah. She'd met loads of famous people. She'd been to dinner with Stevie Wonder.
That's cool.
She'd met what's that famous guy? Nelson? I think it was Nelson Mandela. Yeah, she'd met him, shook his hand. And the woman who made the documentary, she found out that she went to this Nelson Mandela, like, social event thing. And she was like, because the whole thing was filmed, but then she was like, I'm just going to watch all of it and see if I can see her when she was still alive. And there is a 4-second time frame.
Yeah.
Where on the camera, you see her turn around, smile, and then turn back. And she just plays that a lot throughout the documentary. Yeah.
That's so fucking sad.
Yeah. That was
like
Joyce Vincent.
I guess it's that thing we tell ourselves, don't we, isn't it? It's like when we fall out of touch with somebody, instead of chasing it up, we're like, oh, just living a better life. Because it's something comforting to us to avoid asking questions or facing a reality we don't want to face. And like, it wouldn't have taken much.
No,
it wouldn't have taken much for one of her friends or something, or someone that she had been in contact with.
Yeah, that person that she dated.
And where the hell was her boyfriend?
Exactly, he's never come forward.
Where the hell was her boyfriend?
Yeah, they can't even find out who it was.
Because I'm sorry, but you dated a woman. And 1 month after she was in hospital, she falls off the face of the planet.
Yeah.
And you don't even go round to her flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know damn well where she is. She's literally your partner. I don't know how long they were dating.
No, I don't know.
I don't know, but even if I knew, but we don't, that's the problem, okay? We don't know whether they were dating for a couple of weeks or whether they'd been dating for 6 months, because let's be honest, if you're dating for someone for a couple of weeks and then they disappear off the face of the planet, would you go around to their house?
I wouldn't go around to their house, but like I'd message them and stuff, but...
Yeah? But would you do anything else? No.
It doesn't actually mention anything about a phone either, so...
Would you call them?
I'd probably message them and be like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Like...
But if they didn't respond, you just presumed that they'd, like, ghosted you or something.
Yeah, true.
I mean, we have terms for it nowadays, but people ghosted people back in the early 2000s, plenty.
That's the thing, it's just like, I don't know.
It's just a sad series of unfortunate events, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, it's like, I can't remember how I first heard about this case, but not a lot of people, like, talk about it, and, like, there's not a lot out there about her, and it's all very sad, because she definitely could have, I mean, you know what, she might have died either way, if someone had been in contact with her or not. Because, you know, if it was her health, if it was the asthma or the ulcer or whatever, she still might have died. But also, there's two things with that. A, if someone had been in contact with her, they'd have found her a lot sooner. And then you'd be able to do, like, a post-mortem and all that shit.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of questions would still be answered.
Yeah. It would also probably feel like her life was a lot more fulfilled than it had been.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think she might have been looking for that fulfillment but she never really found it anywhere.
No, like it's clear that she was, cycling around from city to city. It's clear she was looking for something. Was that occupational? Was that personal? Was that just an environment that? But at the same time, then there's the domestic abuse.
And not really anything is known about that.
No. Was it a partner? Was it a family member?
I'm going to assume partner.
Partner, okay.
Yeah. But the thing is, what's well known as well is that men were always infatuated with her. And they didn't tend really to back down because she was so beautiful. And obviously she liked to go dancing a lot, so they meet her there. But apart from that, like, obviously she didn't see her family very often, so I believe it was probably a partner. But...
And this boyfriend, I keep going back to the boyfriend, but for someone who's supposed to be infatuated with this clearly beautiful, intelligent, smart, funny woman.
I don't know, when she interviewed the guy that she'd dated previously and the guy that remained friends with her, like, he cried on the documentary about it, and he was just like...
He was mess.
He felt so guilty about not messaging her because he was probably the person she was closest with out of everyone.
And that's sad that your ex-boyfriend...
No, but the thing is, as well, she'd wanted to marry him. But at that time, he was still quite young and he was just like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And that's pretty much why they broke up. But at the same time, obviously, like I said, they remained very close friends. But he's always, like, in the documentary you see it, and he says as well that, like, he'll always be like, if I had, maybe things would have worked out a lot differently and she'd still be here.
That's a dangerous road to go down.
Yeah.
But maybe, but also maybe they would have had a horrific marriage because he felt he was too young to marry and he wasn't ready for it, and maybe they would have, despite the fact that they were good for each other and despite the fact that they clearly loved each other, maybe it would have all ended horrifically badly because... Well,
the thing is, I think with him, I think he was a little bit insecure because he said he was constantly in awe of how this beautiful, incredible woman liked him, and he's just like an average guy.
I get that, but at the same time, it's a dangerous thought to have because you can alienate yourself from your own relationship. Like, if a relationship is going to work, you have to have some sense of self-worth. You can be in an awe of your partner as you like, a little bit of awe in regards to your partner is a good thing, but you have to be able to have enough self-worth to acknowledge that she's chosen you, or it's going to be detrimental to your relationship.
But that's the thing, it's like, when I was watching the documentary, you do see the odd video of her that, like, the people that she was close to at one point, or the closest people that she had of her. And you were just in awe.
She's just a beautiful spirit.
Yeah. And then I think that just makes it more sad that she just kind of faded away. So I don't want her to fade away.
No.
So
it's kind of hard to imagine, like, with that picture, it's kind of hard to imagine her, like, just her remains just left on the floor for 3 years. Like, you don't really think that would ever happen to anybody. Not that young.
I know, and she was only in her 30s.
Like, elderly people, horrifically sad, but fine.
There's a lot of lonely deaths there. To be fair...
Sorry.
It's okay. To be fair, obviously, in the past 20 years, the amount of lonely deaths has increased in young people ridiculously, massively. But in 2003, the internet was only just coming out. Barely. So, yeah, someone that young, especially someone as social and, extroverted as she was.
True.
Very surprising.
But even as social extroverted as you can be, as she probably was, you move around enough, it doesn't matter. You've got to You have a blank slate everywhere you go. You do have to completely rebuild. And if she was hiding from somebody, then I imagine she wasn't as extroverted as she had been.
The thing is, it's just like, obviously I do think some mental illness was definitely there.
Oh, absolutely. I think there was something, diagnosed or undiagnosed, there.
But that's the thing, she'd never talk about it. Not even to the people she was closest with. Not even that guy that she wanted to marry. Never. So please talk to someone.
Please, God.
If you're struggling, please.
I know it's around a lot about please talk, but...
Genuinely, this is the case to really be like, just...
Tell someone.
Yeah.
Even if it's only like a medical professional.
Mm.
Because, you know, it's... You don't talk about it enough, but I can't think of one person that I'm close to that doesn't have some kind of mental health issue.
Yeah, especially these days.
And that's not to say that we're all fucked in the head. We're not. But the thing is that life these days is just it's stressful, you know? Yeah. And it's a struggle these days. And I think it's something worth acknowledging, that it's not like a weakness to say you have a mental health issue, because life is just really hard these days.
I mean, there's nowhere saying that she absolutely did.
No.
But from looking at her life, she absolutely, I'm sure she probably
There was something
did.
going on.
There was something there, yeah.
There was something going on. I don't know whether it was depression, I don't know whether she had anxiety, I don't know what it was.
You know, maybe she didn't know.
Maybe she didn't. Maybe she was just having a rough time and she didn't know how to communicate that to somebody.
True.
Which is difficult in itself, because if you're this person who always has it together and always sociable, like, and suddenly you're not, and you're cancelling, and you're not going to things, it's hard to acknowledge that maybe you're not that person anymore, because you remember me when we first met, I was very extroverted.
Yeah.
I was constantly socialising with somebody from here, there, everywhere. And then over the years, I haven't been as motivated. And it's really hard when you go from someone being really extroverted to someone who's really more comfortable going home and having a cup of tea and talking to your closest friends than going out clubbing and drinking and to big group dinners and stuff. Like, it's hard because you don't feel judged for it, but everybody kind of makes you feel like you're losing something.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be doing this when you're young. And
yeah,
it's like,
you should. These are the best years of your life. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I hope not.
Well, then let me just live it how I want to live it.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just...
But she genuinely did enjoy things like that. She would be out almost every night.
Yeah.
Just dancing. Like, she didn't really even care about interacting with the people. She just liked to dance.
But at the same time, then there's the whole ulcer. That would have been a recovery period for her, and that may have had an effect.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you've gone into hospital to have an ulcer removed or dealt with, that's going to come with a recovery period, and if she's as on her own as she probably was in that flat, she wouldn't have had much support. She probably would have had to look after herself. And this wasn't in the days where Uber Eats was available, you know. If you needed something, you had to go get it.
Yeah.
Like...
I don't know. I think, first of all, you should all definitely watch that documentary. It's called Dreams of a Life. And it's very beautiful.
Bring your tissues, though.
But yeah, it's very heartbreaking. But you do see she's more alive in that documentary, I think, because there's like videos and things of her. She doesn't just feel like this statistic of a person that's died one of these lonely deaths or whatever.
Or just the images.
Yeah, really... she isn't just that person you think of and be like, oh, she wasn't found for 3 years, you know, that woman. She
was a person.
She was a person. Yeah, and I think that's important to... With
hopes and dreams and hobbies and, Lord, dislikes, probably. You know?
Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, it's not a case, like, crime case, technically. But I think it's
a very lonely circumstance.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one that needs to be talked about. Especially in this day and age when, you know, more people are staying in with, like, you know, the internet and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of a joke in movies, you know, the gamer hermit who dies and then isn't discovered for months and years on end. But it is a reality that some people are so isolated that
and now
something as massive as dying goes completely unnoticed.
Yeah, and obviously now it's happening with all ages, and it's getting younger. So I think just try and reach out to people you know.
Yeah, even if it's only one person,
or at least just if you're not up, if you don't have the energy for a conversation, just send them a message saying,
just check it in.
Yeah, and just you're hoping that they're doing okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't just send a message being like, "Can confirm still alive."
Yeah, that would.
But even if it's only one person in this planet, just try and make sure that somebody knows that you're okay or as okay as you can be.
Yeah.
And make sure you have at least one anchor. Yeah. Even if you're not in touch with them a lot, someone who can just say that.
Someone that you can check in with.
Yeah. And someone that if something happens to you, they can say, we were in contact. They were struggling, but we were still in contact. They were still trying,
Yeah.
People are a lot more understanding than you think they're going to be. I think that's something that people forget sometimes, that we let our self-doubts and our anxieties get the better of us sometimes.
Well, I just think I think it'll hit home with a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said before, we've all been out of contact with family before. Yeah. I mean, that period after my mum died, I think the only reason I stayed in contact with you was because you were living next door to me. Like, I fell out of contact with my family. It took about 5-6 months for me to get back in contact with my family again in any kind of sporadic basis. It wasn't even frequent. Like,
but that's the thing. It's like when I first discovered this case, obviously I haven't been in contact with the majority of my family for, well, about a decade now. But I think I discovered this case, it might have been the year or so before I met you. And so that it really got to me because I was just like, I didn't have any friends here. Yeah. And I was just like, the only one that checks in with me, maybe once a week or once a fortnight is my mum. And if I didn't have that relationship or keep that relationship with my mum, if something happened to me,
you just disappear.
No one would know.
Well.
And that really got to me. So
I think it's an innate fear in everybody.
Yeah.
The idea of dying and nobody knowing, like.
I mean, I guess this is gonna get very philosophical, but I guess we all die alone to some degree.
Yeah.
But no one wants to be that alone when they go.
Not for that long.
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah. Okay, so before I start crying, I'm gonna head out.
It's fair.
But yeah,
it's
honestly,
a sad case.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily crime related, but at the same time, I feel like it's just as important to talk about it, if not more.
Yeah.
Because there are some cases that we cover here that are like, finding new information on them is fucking difficult.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
And like sometimes I feel like covering the obscure ones, while they may not be crime related, somebody still died. And a life still ended.
We can't say for definite that it wasn't crime related because we don't know.
We don't know anything, and that's the problem.
Yeah. But just look out for each other.
Yeah.
I think it's
check in.
The main one with that.
Check in with your besties.
And especially with the internet these days, no one is alone. You can go online.
It's true.
So, yeah.
If anything, go ask them if they know about the poor lady who died and nobody found her for 3 years.
Tell her story.
Tell them about the case that you just heard. That is truly wild. Anyway.
I'd love to write a book about Joyce.
Maybe that's something you can do.
Immortalise her
in the literary world.
But definitely watch a documentary.
Absolutely.
This has been episode 25, I think.
Yep.
Bit of an emotional one.
Just a tad, except for that little break we had with the flat viewing.
Yeah, took out our focus a little bit, but we have many more episodes planned, so we hope you enjoyed.
Yes.
I've been Beth.
I have been Becky.
And they would have been BB True Crime. Thank you very much for listening.
We'll see you next episode, guys. Stay safe.